Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Bullony Basketball. I'm here with Johnny. How's it going, Johnny?
What's going on, Garrett? Doing well over here, Chicagoland area, hanging on in there. New year upon us, about a weekend, about 8 to 9 games into the NBA season for each team. So starting to get that sample size up a bit bigger, but excited to dive in and talk about some basketball. How's it going by you?
It's going pretty good. Pretty much, I guess, just an average week. Soon we're gonna be getting into our uh, next semester, I believe, for college. I believe both of us. So, I mean, for the meantime, between time, we got a lot of basketball that we can be watching. So, the one thing that we've been analyzing is how good have these New York Knicks been? It's been pretty insane. Like they're off to a good start. They beat teams like the Jazz, the Bucks, the Pacers, and I mean, really they didn't make too many adjustments. I think Tom Thibodeau being the head coach is probably one of the most notable things. But what do you make of the Knicks' hot start?
Yeah, I think um, there are many that are jumping to say it's a fluke. Um, Yesterday, after beating the Jazz, Austin Rivers came out and said that he's been a part of a lot of bad teams and he knows damn well that this is not one of them. Um, One thing I found very interesting when I was looking into the numbers is, and you kind of mentioned it, the Tom Thibodeau effect. Um, the league leaders in minutes per game, both one and two, reside in New York on the New York Knicks, those being Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. We've seen a huge statistical year from Julius Randle, putting up monster numbers, kind of being that player that many thought he was going to be on the Lakers, kind of blossoming into that thus far on the Knicks, 8 games in. RJ Barrett, same thing, um, really starting to score the ball with ease. And I think what I found interesting as well is that RJ Barrett even said towards the beginning of the year that without fans, he feels less pressure in the garden, that they feel like they can play more freely. Um, and I think something that can be attributed to that is that this New York Knicks team is very young. So a lot of these guys hopping into the spotlight and playing in the Mecca of basketball is probably tough to do in front of thousands of fans that all they want to see is the Knicks become good again because it's been so long. But yeah, just a lot of minutes going around. Um, not playing Nerlens Noel, not playing Dennis Smith Jr., not playing Frank Ntilikina. So really, they're playing six guys heavy minutes and then sprinkling in quickly and Kevin Knox to kind of give some guys breathers um, when they need them. But a very condensed rotation, sitting 5-3 in the East, currently fifth place. Uh, how much longer can this last? That I don't know, but just some of the things I found interesting when I dug through it. Is there something that kind of sticks out to you when you look at the Knicks?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'm looking at for the Knicks, I mean, like you said, they're only playing maybe about 7 to 8 guys every single game. And basically, what that resembles is like a playoff atmosphere. And a lot of these other teams, like, um, say, like maybe like teams that are deeper, like the Nuggets or something, like they might play like 10, 11 dudes. And when they get to the playoffs, maybe they'll cut that to like 7 or 8. But the Knicks, they're literally going, they're 7 or 8 right now. And I mean, of course, I think some of these guys are exceeding expectations. Like Julius Randle, right now he's playing like an MVP. I don't know if that's sustainable throughout the whole season, but if there is an All Star game this season, or at least they, acknowledge All Stars, I think that there's a good chance that he could be on that list by the time that they announce it. Uh, but I mean, like guys like R.J. Barrett, really they've been like up and down, and these Knicks are still like doing well. Like I believe I saw a stat like I think R.J. Barrett was like 1 for like 30 against every team in the league, uh, from like 3 pointer except uh, I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but like he was basically only hitting his threes against one team. Like and they played twice. Everyone else he couldn't even hit. So like it's not like the Knicks have been perfect either, and they've already been off to a pretty good start. It'll be interesting to see. I think Tom Thibodeau being there, he's adjusted to playing like rotations that have injuries or limited guys. We saw like in Chicago when Rose was injured. We saw in Minnesota when Jimmy Butler was injured. So I think that this guy knows how to handle like injury situations or limited rotations pretty well.
His rotations kind of remind me of what Nick Nurse does with the Raptors. Um, During the regular season, same thing with the Raptors. You normally see him go seven, maybe eight deep in and kind of just play their guys big minutes. There's obviously both downfalls and advantages to doing it. The potential downfall is just that your players burn out during the regular season, or you have that increased risk of injury. But an advantage of doing it is that you really get to nail your rotations down early, and you get to allow the players that are going to be playing together on the court in the playoffs to kind of get some time and mesh together. Um, as it stands right now, Randall is averaging 23 points, 12 rebounds, and 7.5 assists a game. So he's coming out there, he's filling the stat sheet, but he's not just filling it without team success, right? They're 5-3, like we mentioned earlier. Um, and then the last thing I want to note is that they're doing a lot of this without Obi Toppin, the 8th overall pick in the 2020 draft. So they haven't really been able to flash or use the guy that they drafted as a potential building block for the future of this franchise. So a lot of it is being done through either free agency, right? Guys like Austin Rivers, Randall came as a free agent, and then they're building internally as well. But it's a lot of youngish players, right? Randall's 26, RJ Barrett is 20, Mitchell Robinson is 22, Elf Payton is 26, Rivers is 28, Knox is 21. So they don't have a single player on their roster that's over 30 years old. So there's at least some belief for the future and some hope for the future.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say they're the only team overachieving right now. Obviously, the Phoenix Suns, I think most people thought they'd be a playoff team coming in, but I don't know if people thought that they'd start out or at least end the season in the position they're at right now in the standings. Um, and a lot of it, it's not even like, people thought when Chris Paul was added to the team, some people were saying Devin Booker's going to average 30 a game. Some people were saying DeAndre Ayton's going to be an all-star. But, I mean, realistically, um, and if you look at in terms of like just a stat sheet, Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton, obviously they're not filling up the stat sheet, but other guys such as Markelle Bridges or Jay Crowder or Cameron Johnson are. So, do you think that this sacrifice that these Sun stars are making is going to be huge to their success?
Yeah, and I think it all starts with Chris Paul, um, kind of coming in and setting the tone as a winning player. The reunion with him and Monty Williams, so they have the connection there. Digging into the stats a bit deeper, this is the look up to this point thus far. Chris Paul's averaging the least amount of points per game he has in his career. Booker on the same track, with the exception of his rookie year where he wasn't playing as much. Um, but this is the breakout year for Markelle Bridges, really emerging. The last couple of years, he was known as a defender and really just a defender, but he's coming out and second on the team in scoring at 14 points a game, shooting 45% from three. So he's really becoming a knockdown 3-point shooter, the prototypical 3-and-D player. Cameron Johnson's a great 3-point shooter as well. And they have a solid rotation. They go 9-10 deep. Monty Williams really knows what he has in this squad. Only 3 players on the team averaging 30 plus minutes. So um, everything's kind of set in stone, and the wheels have been turning in the right direction thus far. And I think that the Suns are really starting to play together and kind of see how everything molds together. Um, with a lot of teams in the Western Conference not living up to expectations, the Suns are taking advantage early on and find themselves in the top 3.
Yeah, and of course, it's still really early, but what I will say is that with the games that they've played so far, like such as the one against the Pelicans, I mean, they pretty much blew them off the court, and this is a team that they were like probably on par with most of last season. Arguably, if the Pelicans were healthy, maybe they would have even finished below them. And then you look at a game like the other day when they played the Raptors, like Siakam had arguably his best game of the season. Lowry, Van Vliet, they were still doing their thing, but the Suns just looked like a way better team. And it's just, you don't expect this because you think like, oh, new teams, they got to build some chemistry first. And it just seems like they already had all this chemistry going together. So, I mean, I don't have much to add to basically what you just said, but I think that the sacrifice is going to be huge, and getting these other role players more acclimated in the system, it's only going to make them more scary when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch upon that, they had a 3-game stretch from the 27th to the 31st in December where they won all 3 games by double digits pretty easily, right? Beat the Kings by 16, beat the Pelicans by 15, and then beat the Jazz by 11. Um, they've been involved in some close games. They beat the Nuggets by 3. They beat the Mavs by 4. And another thing I like to look at too is when teams are losing, are they getting blown out? And they haven't had a blowout loss yet. They lost to the Kings by 3 and they lost to the Clippers by 5. And actually in that Clippers game, they were getting destroyed. But we saw the fight in the second half. They came out in the third quarter and found themselves back in the game, clawed back and only lost by 5. So I think that's another thing to keep an eye on is just are players giving up on their coach and on the team, or are they going to come out and fight? And clearly they came out and fought because, like I said, they were down. What is that? 13-7. They were down 20 at half, and they only ended up losing by 5. So some resiliency there. I like to see that early on from a team that's coming together.
Yeah, and of course it's still early, like we said, but it looks like the crystal ball experiment is working pretty well thus far. A player that has been having success for several years now, and is finally back on the court this season. We have Stephen Curry dropping a career high of 62 points against the Portland Trailblazers. What do you make of the Steph Curry career high night?
Yeah, this comes a day after. Well, I guess not even a day, but this comes a day after a week of slander towards Steph Curry and everybody anointing Damian Lillard as the best point guard in the league and saying that Steph Curry's legacy relies on this year. And I don't understand any of that talk. It's a 3-time MVP. It's a 3-time champion. He's done everything. Um, there's not much more that he needs to do. I guess quick correction: 2-time MVP, not 3 times. Sorry. Um, but he's proved everything he has to. The greatest shooter of all time, a top 3 point guard of all time. Not much of his legacy relies on this year. I mean, heck, he's averaging 30 points. He's averaging 5 rebounds. He's averaging 6 assists a game. Those are right on par with some of the better years of his career. He's playing on a team that just is void of a lot of talent. And since Draymond came back, we've seen what the Warriors can do. And after watching a couple games with Draymond, I feel comfortable putting them in the playoffs now. And so I don't think it's crazy to see this team sneak into the playoffs as a 4, 5, or 6 seed, and maybe do some damage because the Draymond and Steph connection is pretty deadly. And if Kelly Oubre can get going, this team could become somewhat scary-ish.
Yeah, I think the way it seems so far is that they should be a comfortable spot in the playoffs. I'm not too sure if it'd be a higher seed, but I think that they should get in there. The only thing is, like sometimes, like we saw the Clippers the other night when they played the Warriors, and I mean they have a ton of two-way players that they could throw at Steph Curry. So nights like that, it's going to be hard for him, and these other guys need to step up, and then that's where the skepticism comes because is Kelly Oubre going to shoot well from 3? Is Andrew Wiggins? What kind of game are we going to get from Andrew Wiggins? Same thing like James Wiseman, those guys, and really their bench, is kind of questionable as well. But what I will say from has been hearing all the noise that people have been saying. I mean, obviously, people even go back to like the 2016 finals, and there's people out there that believe Kyrie is better than Steph Curry. There's people that believe Dame, from what he's done recently, is better than Steph Curry. And I mean, I like Dame, but I wouldn't put him above Steph Curry. And I think that he kind of proved that on that night, especially since on Friday the Blazers, beat the Warriors, and I believe Dame kind of got the better end than Steph in that game. So people were saying, oh, maybe it is true. But then he comes out with an explosion night just 2 days later. So I think that's kind of what it had to say.
I think for me, at least personally, Curry's in a tier of his own, right? He's up here in terms of point guards, and then if you want to take it down a tier, you have your Kyrie Irvings, your Damian Lillards, and your Luka Doncic's. You can argue between those, but for me, I'm going to take Steph, and I'm going to move on. In terms of the Warriors' playoff aspirations or hopes, not that it relies on this next set of games, but I think we're going to learn a lot about this Warriors team in games 9 through 14. They have the Clippers again. They have the Raptors, the Pacers, the Nuggets, the Suns, and the Lakers. So they're playing teams that should all be in the playoffs. Toronto obviously hasn't looked like a playoff team thus far, but at least at the start of the season, just about everybody, I guess, except myself, had all these teams in the playoffs just because I wasn't a Pacers believer, and I've been proved wrong thus far. But they're set to play a slate where they're playing against some very good teams. So we should be able to learn a lot about their identity here coming up.
Yeah, and I think it's different. I mean, we can give a little bit of light to the Bradley Beal 60-point game real quick. I think it's different because, I mean, with Steph, I think a lot of us are more comfortable that this guy is a super duper talent that can potentially bring them into the playoffs. Whereas the Wizards, yes, they have Beal, yes, they have Westbrook, but outside of that, I mean, I guess it's kind of similar. Like, you don't know what you're gonna get out of the other guys. At least for Steph, he's a proven champion. Draymond, he's a proven champion. Westbrook and Beal, we don't know so much. But I mean, what are your quick thoughts on Bradley Beal game?
Yeah, Beal's been showing out the last couple of years. One thing I've always wondered is what gets said about Beal if he's put on a contender or if he's put on a team that gets notice. Is he labeled a superstar? Is he just a star? Is he the second best player on a championship team? Like I've always wondered what the feeling or the narrative behind Bradley Beal is had he not been on the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I guess we probably there was a good chance that we could have seen that, but I mean, obviously signing the extension seems like he wants to be in Washington at least for the time being. He could pull a Kevin Love like when he signed that big extension with Cleveland, and he's like, I want out of here. Still isn't even out of there, but uh, who knows? Like maybe he could pull one of those very soon. Uh, but obviously, we talked about a lot of good things that have happened, and with good news, there always comes bad news. Yesterday, Markelle Fultz ended up actually tearing his ACL and is labeled to be out the rest of the season. Uh, First of all, how big of a blow is this for the Magic, who've been playing so well? And then, how big of a blow is it just for Markelle Fultz in general with all these injuries that he's had to sustain in his career already?
Yeah, obviously a big blow to the Magic already without Jonathan Isaac. Fournier sat out last game, and we don't know necessarily the extent of his injury. The outlook on this Magic team just doesn't look very good, at least this year, given the abundance of injuries. Maybe this is the year that they finally trade Aaron Gordon. Um, but I kind of want to touch more so on just the Markelle Fultz injury and how it affects himself, because this is somebody that was a former number one overall pick and somebody that had all this hype and then came in and couldn't even shoot the ball, right? He just had no confidence in himself and finds his way to Orlando and struggles a bit the first year, and then last year he finally started to come out and really make a name for himself and find a home in the NBA. And for this to happen is just so heartbreaking. You don't want to see it happen to anybody, but especially a guy like Markelle Fultz who had the hype all the way up here, hit rock bottom, was able to come up and was finally starting to climb the ladder, and now down to square one again. So um, obviously praying for nothing but a quick and speedy recovery, and hopefully he comes back healthier than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Personally, I'm a Markelle Fultz fan, so this, stings. All the stuff that he's already been through with, like his jump shot and all the memes like that. Um, it's pretty crazy, I think, because I believe the next year's draft, DeAndre Ayton was the number one pick, but it seems like people were still talking about Markelle Fultz as the number one pick from that draft class because, he hadn't really played the year before, and I think he got a lot of more media attention than Ayton. So, like, you got to live with, like, all that for two straight seasons, and then once you finally come back, then something like this happens. It's just not cool. And the way he was playing so far, I believe his like last game before, like his last full game before, wasn't too great. But I mean, he's been key to the Magic's success so far. And I mean, he's already had a lot of like good flashes so far in this season alone. So it's tough. I think, once he comes back, I believe that, I mean, he's a really good basketball player. So he should be able to come back and hopefully he can produce at the same level that he was, about a week ago.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the numbers he's been putting up this year necessarily warrant the first overall pick, but he was coming out and putting up numbers and winning games. He's been a plus in uh, one, two, three. He's been a plus in just over half of the games he's been on the court. He's put up double digit points in all but four of the games. Um, he's had 7+ assists in 4 games. So he's really been able to steady the ship in Orlando and really just kind of make sure that things run smoothly there. And it all starts with the point guard, the facilitator, and he was finally able to provide some steadiness within that for the Magic. Um, I guess if you want to look at silver linings, now we get to see what Cole Anthony is made of and see if he steps into that starting point guard role. Not sure what Steve Clifford is going to opt to do with the Magic, but I think that Cole Anthony is certainly a candidate to find his way into the starting lineup.
And the one thing I will say about Fultz is that essentially when he joined the Magic, it seemed like he was kind of like a rookie. Those years at the Sixers were kind of so like up and down. It wasn't even really, in my opinion, the real Markelle Fultz. Uh, so essentially, he's basically in his sophomore year, and he's been efficient the last 2 years. And most of these young players, like you even see Luca or Trey Young, like they really sometimes struggle with that as well. So this is something that this dude has had, you know, out of the gate. So I think that's another blow is that you always want to have an efficient player, especially at the point guard position, and losing that is going to be tough for the Magic going forward for the rest of the season.
Yeah, basically, just to sum it up quickly, it's just the resiliency we've seen through Markelle Fultz. It's hitting rock bottom, being able to find a home in Orlando and finally start to climb up the ladder, and now just starting down on the bottom again, and we're gonna see what he's really made of.
Definitely. And I mean, the Magic right now, they were sitting at second in the East. The only team above them is, I believe, the Philadelphia 76ers, um, who are being led by Joel Embiid. And on the other side of things, on the Western Conference, we have another center that's playing like an MVP, and his team's starting to pick things up, I believe, and that is Nikola Jokic. So it seems like these two are the front runners so far for MVP. Of course, the Nuggets haven't been a great team, but I think they're starting to get back in the swing of things. Um, what do you think of these guys and how they've played so far?
Yeah, this has always been one of the biggest debates when we talk about the NBA and we compare players. The center position has, for the last couple of years, kind of just been brought upon these two and kind of who's the better of Jokic and Embiid. And I've always been a Jokic believer, somebody that just affects the game in so many ways. Thus far in the season, he's averaging a triple double. But as you mentioned, his team is scuffling, and while they're up on the in the right direction here in the last couple of games, they're still not necessarily where many thought they would be. If the season ended today, it's got to be Embiid for MVP for me. Not necessarily putting up the numbers that Jokic is, but is still putting up 26 and 12. But he's affecting the game on defense in a way that Jokic doesn't. A top candidate for Defensive Player of the Year as well with Embiid, and could actually be considered the front runner for that award as well. Um, and so a lot of what Jokic does, he has to be able to beat Embiid so much offensively because we know that he's not on that level defensively that Embiid is. Um, we know through past history that MVP award is generally handed out to the best player on one of the better teams in the league, unless it's just such a statistical anomaly that we haven't seen before, i.e., the Russell Westbrook triple double MVP year. Um, and so I don't think it's sustainable that Jokic averages a triple double for the rest of the year. But depending on what happens with the trajectory of the Nuggets, certainly viable that these two are the ones that are fighting for that MVP trophy come the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you basically touched on a lot of it, but I mean, just looking at Joel Embiid, I think he would probably be the front runner for MVP as of right now. He's been a critical part to their defense being so great. I believe the one game that he missed this year, I think they got blown out by like the Cavs or something. So I mean, yeah, small sample size, but I mean, it kind of says a little bit about his impact. And really, I mean, I think he's benefited guys like Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, and Danny Green as well. Um, as for Jokic, yes, he is averaging a triple double. I think it's possible that he could average a triple double by the end of the season. Um, I believe Westbrook, the Big O, these guys like average like a 30-point triple double. I don't think Jokic will get there, at least not anytime soon. But I think the Nuggets are going to start getting back on track. And the thing about MVP is that usually once you've already proven like something in the league, sometimes it becomes harder to even like prove yourself even more. Like Giannis, the last 2 years, he's won MVP. I mean, right now the Bucks, they're like kind of like at the bottom of it, like in the middle of the pack of every team. So obviously the way, I mean, Giannis is playing great, but he wouldn't be probably one of the top candidates for MVP right now. Kevin Durant, he's already won an MVP. Of course, he's going to miss some time now. So, I mean, we'll see. And the Nets have kind of been up and down themselves. LeBron, I mean, he's already won 4 MVPs, so he's going to have to do something outlandish to win it himself. Like, there's always going to be a little bit of a narrative driven within it. But I think, I mean, just looking at the way the Sixers have played, they look like a completely different team right now under Doc Rivers. And I think Joel Embiid has been, he looks like he's in better shape too. So I think that right now he'd probably be the favorite for MVP.
Yeah, no doubt. And to add on to the success of Embiid, I think finally surrounding him with more shooters and Danny Green and Seth Curry has kind of just opened things up. More space to work within the lane. Basketball Reference has their own MVP tracker award, and no surprise, they have Embiid and Jokic 1-2. They have Embiid with a just north of 50% chance to win it. Jokic sits second with 16%, and then everybody else is below 8%. 3 through 10, they have Malcolm Brogdon, Sabonis, LeBron, Vucevic, Antetokounmpo, Ben Simmons, AD, and Harden. So that's just kind of where they stand right now, but it's pretty clear via that the top two are Embiid and Jokic.
Yeah, and like I believe about half the people you just named are all like, big men, which is interesting because I mean the MVP, yeah, you could count Giannis, I guess, but he's more like a forward. It hasn't really been won by like a big man since probably as far as like Dirk in like '07, or even like maybe KG in 2004, Tim Duncan early on in the 2000s, and Shaq. Like it's been some time, I believe, since like a big man actually won MVP. Like it's mainly been like a point guard or a combo wing player that has won the award. So it'll be interesting if they sustain this play all season long. It'll be something a little bit new because we haven't seen it in almost like a decade and a half.
Yeah, and just quickly to round things off, based on what you're talking about, the last big man to win it was 06-07 Dirk. Because before that, we've seen Giannis a couple of years, Harden, Westbrook, Curry, Durant, LeBron, D Rose, LeBron, Kobe, and then Dirk in '06. So Dirk, KG. There was that stretch of big men from '98 to '03 where you had Karl Malone, Shaq, you had the 1 year of AI, and then 2 years of Duncan and Garnett. So it's been dominated by guards and wings the last couple of years, the last 10 years, if you will. So we'll see if history breaks itself this year.
That we will, and it should be interesting to see. But we're going to move on now to our daily picks to close out the show. Starting with January 8th, we had the Thunder and Knicks. What do you got in that one?
I'm riding New York.
I am as well. I think the Knicks are going to get it done. January 9th, we have the Nuggets and the Sixers, the two MVP candidates going head to head. Who do you got?
Yeah, I like Jokic to make a statement here, so I'm going to take the Nuggets.
I got the Nuggets as well. I believe last time they played last season, Jokic hit like a game winner, or at least one of the times they played last year. I could expect it being close again, and maybe even the same outcome. We'll see. Uh, January 10th, we have the Spurs and Timberwolves. Who do you got?
Yeah, Timberwolves are scuffling. I like the way the Spurs young players are starting to develop and veterans are playing well. I'm going to take the Spurs.
Yeah, I got the Spurs as well. The Timberwolves, I mean, we'll see when Karl Anthony Towns eventually comes back, but right now they haven't like looked too great without him. So I'm taking the Spurs. As for January 11th, we have the Suns Wizards. Who's taking that one?
I like Phoenix. I'm convinced the way they're playing thus far is enough to beat Washington.
Yep, I think Phoenix should win this one, and I think it'll be a pretty easy win as well. Uh, January 12th, we have the Lakers Rockets. Who do you got?
Yeah, I like the Lakers to beat the Rockets here. Not much to be said.
I'm gonna take the Rockets. Actually, I know they play twice in like 3 days. I'm expecting the Lakers to win the other one, but I think I checked this one has like the Lakers doing a back to back, so there's a good chance that the Rockets could take this game. January 13th, we have the Pelicans Clippers. Who's winning that game?
Marcus Morris back coming off the bench, Batum playing well in the starting lineup. I think the Clippers are going to start to find a little mojo here.
Yep, I got the Clippers in this one as well. And the last day, January 14th, we have the Rockets again against the Spurs. Who's winning this one?
Yeah, I like the Rockets here. I think a little bit more time to kind of blend that big four together and see if they can get some things spinning in the right direction. So I'm going to take Houston.
I got Houston taking this as well. By the big four, you mean uh, Harden, Wall, Christian Wood, and who else?
Boogie.
Boogie. Okay, I was wondering. I know he's been coming off the bench and stuff. I don't know. Like I'd like to see him give him playing time though for sure.
He started yesterday in place of Christian Wood. Got some minutes and put up some numbers. I think they need to kind of just unleash him and see what they have in him. I don't think they're. I don't know why you only play him 15 minutes a game and move on. At this point in his career, see what's left in the gas tank and maybe you come across something. But saving him, if you will, by only playing him 15 minutes a game, not so sure I agree with that.
Yeah, especially since like, I mean Harden's already voiced that he kind of wants out, so it's like you have nothing to lose at this point. You might as well just try anything you can. Um,
Yeah, push all your
Chip,
chips all in and see what you got.
exactly. But that's pretty much gonna close out the show. I hope you guys enjoyed. Any final thoughts, Johnny?
Nothing big, nothing that sticks out to me. Just another week of basketball. Like I said, finally getting to that point where our sample sizes are starting to get a bit bigger, and we're not necessarily making these assumptions based on 3, 4, 5 games. So we'll be able to kind of see where teams stand and kind of be able to get that trajectory figured out a bit better now.
Yeah, I think once we get like about a month through the season, I think then we can start to like make some generalizations. That's like, okay, this is gonna happen or this. Um, we're still pretty early, so a lot of this is still speculation, but we'll see. I mean, time will tell. Thank you guys for watching this episode, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.